Hello, my name is Thomas. This is my resubmission for our informative discussion. I want to point out all three audience members in attendance. Say hello, audience members. And my visual cues on the board behind me on both the smart board here and the whiteboard here. So today's discussion, if you'll follow along with the PowerPoints that were sent out to you prior to the presentation, is on the electrical pathway of the heart. Why is it important we as paramedics know the electrical pathway of the heart? It's because it determines all factors with our pathological care, right? So the first thing we're going to start off with is the SA node, or I like to call it the starting gun of the heart, okay? This is known as the primary pacemaker. What do we think the primary pacemaker is responsible for? It's responsible for determining our overall heartbeat. See, we have the SA node starts in the sinus of the heart, sinoatrial node, beginning here represented by point number 1. Our intrinsic value here, or the set rate, is going to fall, if you're referring to the whiteboard, between 60 to 100 beats per minute. We term this as a normal sinus rhythm. What we look at normal sinus rhythm for is just a healthy heart. If you're a normal person, you should be falling between 60 to 100. We're going to have a good looking complex, and everything is going to be hunky-dory. Hey, can we look a little higher than 100? Absolutely. Nothing really starts to look bad until the morphology of our heart changes, but that's a topic for a more in-depth discussion. Any questions along that? No. From the SA node, we travel down the internodal pathway. The internodal pathway has no set intrinsic value. The internodal pathway has no set intrinsic value, and it is just the path our heart follows. So as we travel down the internodal pathway to the AV node is when we start to see changes in our values. Values are going to change to a rate between 40 to 60 because we're now picking up at the ventricles of the heart. The ventricles are the big meat within the middle of the heart. That's where our big pump fires. Our SA node is called S1, fires our initial beat of the heart. The ventricles then contract and produce the blood flow we all depend on to kind of be a person, right? So we have our fire and then our contraction. We look there, if the SA node fails, if you'll see the smiley face, and the smiley face is in the PowerPoint provided to you already, our smiley face means everything's looking good. We're feeling healthy, we're feeling good. Our meh face means we're not necessarily looking grievous yet, but it's not healthy anymore. We're going to see what we call a loss of a P wave. All no P wave means is that the sinoatrial node is no longer involved. So we're skipping that top part of the heart. So we can no longer fire at 60 to 100. Again, the caveat, can you fall in the ventricular section and still be over 100? Yes, that's called ventricular tachycardia and is a very lethal rhythm. Again, another discussion for a more in-depth topic. So we go to the AV node. Everything's looking kind of grim now. And hit the bundle of his. The bundle of his is where we start to split off into the left and right ventricles, indicated by the flowing into the left and right bundle branches. We may be familiar with bundle branch blocks. Bundle branch blocks are a block in the pathway. We may see what we call reentry, which is the electrical impulse hitting that branch and having to go the other way around town to get to where it needs to be. Again, our values are not affected yet. We're still looking good. We're still doing pretty well. No big life-threatening changes. Abnormalities to this can be serious as what we call imposters. Imposters mimic a heart attack, but are not truly heart attacks. Again, we'll get into that topic as we discuss it further on in the course. But it needs to be something we're cognizant of. The last effect to our values is when we reach the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers, they still sit in the ventricles, but at the base of the ventricles. They are your heart's last dying breath to get that heart rate put out and that blood circulating. We see here in the PowerPoint provided to you, you have a pulse rate between 20 to 40. You don't need to be a trained paramedic or a trained doctor to know a heart rate of 20, probably problematic. Okay, we're going to see poor perfusion and signs of altered mental status in our patients. There are tools and techniques we can use to rectify these, but it is still an issue to be cognizant of. what we need to understand how our heart beats and what areas make it beat is at the end of the day, human beings are like a watch. If your watch isn't ticking, it's not worth much, is it? Okay. Thank you for coming to the presentation today and for sitting in class. Again, 3 audience members are in attendance. I appreciate your time and thank you for coming out. Mr. William, if you will stop the recording for me.